I find that the problem most people have when speaking to another person is that oftentimes they're heard,
Are you deaf?
No, you is blind.
I'm not blind, you blind.
That is what I just said.
but they're not understood.
Shut up! You!
Yes?
Not you, him! What's your name?
Me.
Yes, you!
I am me. He's me. And I'm you.
Communication is simply transferring information from one person, group, or place to another, and understanding how to communicate with someone on an individual level is crucial for the most efficient form of communication. It's like having two children frantically run up to you speaking either French or Mandarin. You have an idea that what they're saying might be significant, but you still can't put together their words. And if you don't believe me, communication is everything.
I'm Detective Carter. Do you speak any English?
Think about yourself as a human right now. Other than walking around and looking at things, or sleeping, or eating, or smelling things, or smiling to yourself, our lives are filled with communication and interaction. So since we're social creatures inside of a society, therefore communication is inevitable. So think about any time that you want a job, you sell yourself to someone. Or if you feel threatened, you may become confrontational. Or if you're hungry, you might ask the clerk where the Eggos are. We do and say all these things, whether they're verbal or nonverbal, to express ourselves to other people so that we have some sort of image or characteristics, or essentially so that we're an actual person. It falls into all the aspects of our lives. When it comes to food, opportunities, people, everything, communication is all wrapped up into that. And so when you don't know how to communicate, you're like one of those two kids. You may understand things a certain way, but that does not mean that other people live inside of your head with you. Oftentimes, people just assume that what they say is digestible by just anyone. And newsflash, it is not. People have different personality types or archetypes, and as well as different communication forms. Assuming that other people understand you because you understand your own words coming out of your own mouth is absolutely terrible. For instance, in martial arts or in boxing specifically, if you're fighting or sparring someone you've never fought before, then you do something called conditioning. And there's many types of conditioning, but the one type of conditioning you do is for the first round that you engage with them, you don't necessarily try to fight them. You don't necessarily go at your best. You don't sit here and try to, win the fight immediately. Essentially, you're putting them through a mental test. And in that mental test, you tap them in different places to see how their bodies react and how their minds react. So if you punch someone in the face, they might duck. Or if you hit somebody in the face, they might lift their hands up, exposing their body, or vice versa. The point is, people do that in a fight to gain an advantage against another fighter who they've never been in combat with before. So when you're testing this person and you're tapping them from point to point to point, you get to see how their bodies react. And then you could also line up your shots to fit into that. So if every time you punch someone in the face, they keep lifting their hands up, like time and time and time again, you wait for the second round. And the moment that you keep doing that and you see that they're repeating the same task over and over and over again, that's when you take as many open shots as possible. So not only are you essentially making someone do things that they're not conscious of, but you're effectively and efficiently beating your opponent within a short amount of time. Because whenever they move, or whenever they slip, or whenever they lift or lower their hands, then you have open shots that you can take. Communication is similar to that. You essentially have to keep tapping people or touching them to a certain degree where you break through their personality and communication form at the same time. You're not going all in immediately, because at that point you might just scare someone off, or you might lose the opportunity, or you might just put yourself in a position that you don't want to be put in. But essentially, if you tap them, then you begin to condition them. Once conditioning begins, the exam starts. You take note of their behavior, specifically nonverbals. Do they maintain eye contact? Is their posture firm? Are they using more gestures than before? Which words are now coming out of their mouth? Are they more selective with the words they use around you? Are they reaffirming ideas to themselves out loud? This goes both ways. You have to maintain yourself while you're digging. Take a soft approach. Ask neutral questions, throw in a joke or two, slowly apply pressure up until the point where you feel the room get tense, and then you let go. And over time,
practice does make progress.
So whenever you might want something like an opportunity or to have a progressive conversation and you don't know how they communicate, or you don't really understand their personality type so far, and you only have a short window of time, you would say certain things, you would do certain things, you would make certain facial expressions, you would read their facial expressions, you would listen to what they say, listen to their reactions, and so on and so forth. So this way you can interact with people and learn more about them in a short amount of time while also acting in your best interest. What's very important about communication with others is also very important for communication within yourself. If you don't know how to speak to others, then you won't necessarily know how to speak to yourself or how to communicate certain ideas to yourself. Because your mind is tricky. You have to stay on top of it. It can lead you down paths that you don't necessarily want to go down. Think about it as if you're at your job or you're at work and your boss asks you to do something that you don't necessarily want to do. And you might feel that it's unnecessary or it's outside of your pay grade, but because you're anti-confrontational or you just don't know how to communicate, you say yes and you do it anyways. If you do that long enough, you start to build microaggressions or essentially just little resentments against that one person. And you may not be doing that intentionally. You're not necessarily a bad person, but doing something that goes against your own interest over and over again creates resentment for not only that other person, but for yourself. So it's a mirror image, essentially. You don't know how to communicate. You don't know how to engage. You don't know how to condition. You don't know how to do a bunch of things, or you just simply don't practice them. You end up saying yes to everything, or you don't say everything that's on your chest, and you start to build little microaggressions or little resentments against people who you may like or people who you may love or people that you may respect because you're just not comfortable with yourself enough to have that conversation. And so communication goes both ways. If you can't communicate to others, then you can't necessarily communicate efficiently to yourself. So when you're building those microaggressions or those resentments towards a boss of yours, at the same time, you're building them towards yourself. Because at a certain point, you begin to wear a mask or a face where, since I can't communicate with this other person, I have to sit here and live to this expectation, or I have to create myself into this person. Or essentially, you grow a sense of imposter syndrome where now you're not who you say you are because you're not able to speak your mind to other people and neither to yourself. And at that point, you're trying to fit into something that you were never supposed to fit in the first place. And then you just see yourself going down a rabbit hole further and further and further down of, well, I have to be this person. I have to act like this. The better that you are communicating with others, the better that you are going to be communicating with yourself.
So if you desire the position, the job, the opportunity, the girl, whatever it is, there's a good chance that there's communication involved, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. Videos like these are not going to solve your issues. There's actual work that you have to do. This is not for motivation. This is simply to introduce a concept that you can go against or for. Form your own opinion. You need to practice. You need to put yourself in positions that you don't want to be in. Keep doing it and adjust until you see that
Practice makes progress.
that way people can understand you.